I'm looking forward to this tonight.
My own? Everybody hear me? I can't hear it. Let me turn it up. Move it up. That didn't work, Andrew.
We got Miss Judy's watching. We got to do this real quick. Everybody, come here real quick. Can you get us all on there, Andrew? Are we live streaming? Okay.
Just cut some of the ugly ones out on the side. Brother Tim, where's Brother Tim at? make sure and focus out a little bit.
All right, real quick. You want to say hi? You can talk on that one. That way she can hear us.
Hey, Miss Judy, we hope you get better.
Everybody,
we're all praying for you.
We love you, Miss Judy.
Love you.
All right, she better sing that.
All right. I got curious last week after I left and said something about it, so I kept searching for the term Good Friday because I kind of wanted to know if I could find a little more on it. I did find supposedly the first use of the term Good Friday came in a text from 1290, the year 1290. Now, for all you younger people, that text, this is a text, not a text, okay? For 1290, it was according to the Baltimore Catechism. There's that Catholic term that I said something about last week, which was the basis for the Catholic school text from 1885 to the 1960s here. And so you can see how it kind of infiltrated here and into our country. If some of y'all may have some questions, and there's probably lots of questions going through people's heads. If you have some, I'll be glad to answer them. One that we had last week that somebody here may be thinking, and so I thought I'd address it. Brother Eddie asked last week, how do we know that this was a Wednesday? Well, so we know from the scriptures that the Passover was the 14th, right? Well, so then it's just a matter of going backwards, okay? If you know, and we'll get there, but if you know he rose on Sunday morning, which was the first day of the week, then if you go backwards, you'll get to Wednesday the 14th. And we'll see that as we move through. But that's the only way that there's no other way that we know that other than that. All right, so I think I left off last week. We stopped here, I believe. So we should be ready. He'd had the 5 trials. He'd already been declared guilty, and so he's ready to go to the cross. Okay, so well, put our first verse up there. So just as a reminder, there's our key verse. Okay, for as Jonas was 3 days and 3 nights in the whale's belly, so shall the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. All right, the next verse. Just remember, all right, I'll read this. Let me find this. This is our Exodus verse, okay? So Exodus chapter 12, verse 15. No, 6. And you shall, so 5, let's 5. I'll read 5. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper doorposts of the houses wherein they shall eat it. and they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. And then verse 15, 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread, even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. This is a squirrel skew that I'm going to hit, but I just thought about it. What is a representative of sin in the Old Testament? Leaven, right? Brother Eric did this not long ago, and I don't know if he made this point or not, but what do you have to put in alcohol to make alcohol? Leaven. You have to add that to it. Yeast, you have to add that to it to make alcohol. So don't give me the fact that Jesus turned water into wine. Jesus didn't want anything to do with sin. Amen? Okay. All right, so I've run that rabbit real quick. Verse 16. And in the first day there shall be an holy convocation, and the 7th day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, remember, first month is April, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at even. 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses, for whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. So that's a reminder. That's how we're getting where we are. That's how we know 14th is Passover, okay? All right, so now let's move to the next verse. The next verse, let's go to Mark chapter 15. We're fixing to hit one of our trouble verses that I put on the board last week too. Mark 15, verse 25. Mark says, and it was the 3rd hour, and they crucified him. So, remember, the time starts at 6 a.m., the morning hours. So, the 3rd hour is 9 a.m. So, we know he went to the cross at 9 a.m., all right? Now, the next verse, go to John chapter 19. Now, there's only 2 Gospels that talk about this time. And so here's our first trouble verse that we kind of talked about last week. John chapter 19, verse 14. John says, and it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he saith unto the Jews, behold your king. So John says it's about the 6th hour. So now we have 2 verses that don't agree, okay? So John, so here's what, if you look it up and you read it and you find some commentaries and you look, John, the reference is that John was probably talking about Roman time, okay? Now, there's really nothing that tells us for sure if it's Roman time or not. If it was Roman time, now Roman time is like our time, okay? So Roman time, the 6th hour would have been 6 a.m. But it says about 6 a.m. So remember, that could be 7, could be 8. It could be a little bit skewed from there. There's nothing really that tells us a definitive answer. But we do know, if you just think about the Scriptures and you think about the Gospels, John is different, right? Would everybody agree that John is a different gospel? Not a different gospel, but a different book. Number one, it's written so a person can get saved, all right? So it's already different than what Matthew, Mark, and Luke is. But remember, this is also John that wrote Revelation. So he has a different picture and a different perspective. So it's very, very possible that he was talking about Roman time, okay? So that's where you just kind of have to think that that's probably right. Now, when we go through here in a little bit, then we're going to get to a lot more verses that tell us some times after this, and you have to almost know that this is correct. But there's no way to know that definitively, okay? So, the next verse we're going to go to is Matthew chapter 27. Am I right, Andrew? Okay. Matthew chapter 27. Look at verse 45. It says, "Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour." So, you know, it went dark for 3 hours while Jesus is on the cross. So, the 6th hour would be noon. The 9th hour would be 3 p.m. So, there's our first thing there that tells us there was darkness from noon to 3. Now go to Mark chapter 15 again. Mark 15, verse 33. "And when the 6th hour was come, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour." So that one agrees. Luke chapter 23. This is the last place. This is not mentioned in John, which I believe is another reason of why John was probably talking about Roman time, because he doesn't talk about it again. Luke chapter 23, look at verse 44. "And it was about the 6th hour, and there was a darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour." So we know this was darkness from 12 to 3. So if we know that was darkness from 12 to 3, it's got to be pretty close to this time. I mean, you can't get any more definitive than that, but that's about what you have to almost you just have to put your faith in it and believe it, okay? All right, so now go to Matthew chapter 27. Matthew 27, look at verse 46. We just read 45 that said, "Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour." 46 says, "And about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Some of them that stood there, when they heard that, said, This man calleth for Elias. Straightway one of them ran, took a sponge, and filled it with vinegar, and put it on a reed, and gave him to drink. The rest said, Let be, let us see whether Elias will come to save him. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost." So now we know about the 9th hour, he died. Okay? Or that's what Matthew says. So now go to Mark chapter 15 again. And verse 34. "And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani, which is, being interpreted, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And some of them that stood by, when they heard it, said, Behold, he calleth Elias. And one ran and filled a sponge full of vinegar and put it on a reed and gave him to drink, saying, Let alone, let us see whether Elias will come to take him down. And Jesus cried with a loud voice and gave up the ghost." So there we have another verse that agrees with that. Now, let's see. Luke chapter 23. Every one of the Gospels record this. Luke chapter 23, verse 46. "And when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said thus, he gave up the ghost." And then John chapter 19, verse 30. "When Jesus therefore had finished the vinegar, he said, It is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost." And it is, every one of those agree that it's about this time. It's about 3 p.m. Okay? So now he's hanging on the cross and he has died. So now he has to get, they want him off. Just remember, this is Wednesday, okay? This is the Passover, but they're not going to celebrate it until even at Passover. So they're going to celebrate it at supper time here in the South. Supper time on Wednesday, okay? All right, so now we have to have the body taken off. So now Matthew chapter 27, Everybody with me? Matthew chapter 27. Look at verse 57. And they that had laid hold on Jesus led him away to Caiaphas. Oh, where am I? I'm in the wrong one. 27:57. And when the even was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. So when even was come, so now we know it was somewhere about eventime when he takes the body off the cross. All right, so we have several that agree with that. We have Mark chapter 15, verse 42. And now when the even was come, because it was the preparation, that is the day before the Sabbath. Now, read that carefully, okay? And now when the even was come, because it was the preparation. Remember, this day was preparation day. So they're preparing to kill the Passover all day. And so now they have done that. Now our Jesus has died as the Passover. And so now they've done that because it was the preparation. That is the day before the Sabbath. What Sabbath are we talking about? First day of unleavened bread. Remember? So the Passover is the Sabbath that they killed the Passover, and then we have Thursday, it's a high day Sabbath, which is the first day of unleavened bread. Remember, Exodus told us that. Exodus chapter 12, verse 18 or 19 said, the first day for 7 days you have unleavened bread. And the first day of this is a Sabbath day. The 7th day also is a Sabbath day, okay? So now we have Wednesday and we have Thursday. That's a Sabbath, all right? That's important because we need to understand that. Go to Luke chapter 23. This is where people start getting confused. This is where it starts getting hard to decipher the times, and people will just soon just take what somebody gives them. Look at Luke chapter 23, look at verse 54. It's not going to be up on the board, but I'm going to start at verse 50. And behold, there was a man named Joseph, a counselor, and he was a good man and a just. The same had not consented to the counsel and deed of them. He was of Arimathea, a city of the Jews, who also himself waited for the kingdom of God. This man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus, and he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man before was laid. And that day was the preparation, and the Sabbath drew on. So that day was the preparation, again, and the Sabbath is drawing on, or drawing nigh, okay? Now, one more place, look at John chapter 19. John 19, verse 31. The Jews, therefore, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day. What's that next say? For that Sabbath day was a high day. All right, so now we have verification that this day is a high day, Sabbath day, because it's the first day of unleavened bread. And it even tells you that. They besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and that they might be taken away. And then it goes on and tells you all of that. Then look at verse 42. There laid they Jesus, therefore, because of the Jews' preparation day, for the sepulchre was nigh at hand. So now we know, all right, so now they got the body down. They could not have it on the cross on the first day of unleavened bread. So now they've taken it down, and now they're going to celebrate Passover. I guess Donna's got my markers. So now, I didn't write this up here, but now after the body is taken down, they're going to celebrate Passover. You see why my wife wrote, right? They're going to celebrate Passover with the meal. They're going to have the Passover meal after that body's taken down at somewhere around even, okay? All right, so now we're to Thursday. We're starting Thursday. Remember, calendar's weird, so it starts at 6 p.m. So at 6 p.m., we're starting Thursday, the 15th, and it's the first day of unleavened bread, okay? All right, so now look at, what's my next verse, Andrew? Okay, Leviticus 23. He'll put it up there. I'm going to turn to that. But remember, Leviticus 23, all that does is tell us, verse 5, is that right? Yeah. Verse 5, remember, all that does is tell us what these days are. Verse 5, in the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover, which is Wednesday. All right? Verse 6, and on the 15th day of the same month, so now this is the 15th, then is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. Okay? All right, so that's just confirmation for us. So now go to Mark chapter 16. Mark chapter 16. Now, and these verses are going to get tough, okay? Because it gets a little bit, it gets a little hard to understand. It's not when you see it on paper, and so it's much easier when you see it on the board. But we have a Sabbath on Wednesday, a Sabbath on Thursday, right? Now, what's Saturday? It's a Sabbath, right? So they have their normal weekly Sabbath is on Saturday. So you remember I pointed out in the beginning, we had 3 Sabbaths in here, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. All right, so now look at this verse, chapter 16, verse 1. It says, and when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James and Salome had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. When did they get those spices? If it happened on Friday, all right, let's just say Good Friday's correct. Passover would have been Friday, right? Saturday would have been the weekly Sabbath, right? Sunday, he rose. When did they get the spices? They had to have a work day. They had to have a normal work day. This is Friday. After the Sabbath was passed, okay, they had to have a normal work day. Go to the next verse. Luke chapter 23. Luke chapter 23, verse 56. And they returned, verse 55, so we'll have a context. And the women also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after him, beheld the sepulchre, and how his body was laid. And they returned, they who? The women, okay? And they returned and prepared spices and ointments, and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. So if Friday was correct, and they rested on the Sabbath, there's not a day they could have gone back to anoint him. He's gone, right? So they rested on a normal work day. They had this normal work day where they collected spices, and then they rested on, when we flipped the board, on Saturday. So they rested on Saturday, which was the Sabbath, okay? Read it again. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments. So remember, you can't do anything. All right, let me go to that verse. It's in just a. Is it next? Is my Numbers verse next? What is it? Numbers 15:32. Okay. 15. Just so you, I mean, it's hard for us to understand this because we don't live like this, all right? Now look at Numbers 15, verse 32. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. Well, he's just picking up sticks. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him unto Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation, and they put him in ward because he was not declared what should be done to him. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the congregation. And all the congregation brought him without the camp, and stoned him with stones, and he died, as the Lord commanded Moses. The Sabbath was not a joke. Okay, they did not do anything on the Sabbath. Okay, so if they had a work day in here to do something, then that's when they did it, and this is the only day they could. So does that make sense? Does everybody understand that? But this is where everybody gets confused, because they see the Sabbath was passed. Well, it has to be Saturday. No, we had another Sabbath in here, the first day of unleavened bread. So that's why you can't get, if you go back to our key verse, you can't get 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth from Good Friday to Sunday morning, right? So you know it has to be, this has to be the truth. Is it hard? Yes. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. 2 Timothy 2:15. That's why we study. That's why we need to know. That's why we don't just take something that some Catholic tells us about our Bible. Okay? So that's why we have it. That's why he gave it to us. He gave it to us to study and to read. So does everybody understand that and see that? Let's go back to our verses. Go back to Mark chapter 16. Let's just read them again real quick. Can you go back for me, Andrew? Mark chapter 16, verse 1. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome had bought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. So they're going to anoint him on Sunday morning, okay? But they had to gather everything that they needed to go do that, all right? So then if you look at our verse again, Luke chapter 23. Luke 23:56. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. So they did that here, and then they rested on Saturday. Okay? All right, now, so now we're to Sunday morning. All right, so now, let me flip this board. Does everybody understand how we are where we are? So now we have Wednesday the 14th. We have Thursday the 15th, Friday the 16th. By the way, this is the first day. This is the second day. Whoops. Now we have Saturday the 17th, which is the weekly Sabbath day, and this is the third day. So we have 1 day from the 14th to the 15th, 2 day, 3 day. All right, so now Matthew chapter 28. Matthew 28, verse 1. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. So, as the day of the Sabbath, the end of the Sabbath, and it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. So, the end of the Sabbath, first day of the week, Sunday morning. All right. So, Matthew 28. Let's see, verse 2. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him the keepers did shake and became as dead men. And the angel answered and said unto the women, Fear not ye, for I know that you seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come, see the place where the Lord lay. Now, all of these agree. Mark chapter 16. Mark chapter 16, verse 2. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. And then verse 9. Now when Jesus was risen early the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils. Now we don't know exactly when this time is. I put he's risen between 6 p.m. on Saturday, because that's when we swap to Sunday, remember? So Saturday at 6 p.m. we're swapping to Sunday by their time. So he rises sometime between there and early in the morning before dawn, it says. Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 24, verse 1. Now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, they came into the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And then John chapter 20. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. So we know that it happened sometime during the night. I mean, really, it's over 3 days. He's there a little over 3 days. 3 days and 3 nights, okay? But we know that's when he had to have rose, somewhere during that time. So, what questions we got? Everybody understand that? Do you see the I know you see the trouble verses, but you see how people can get mixed up very easily, especially if they don't want to study it. But I said last week, there's some things in the Bible that we have to interpret correctly, and we understand things way more now than they did 400 years ago. We understand things better than they did 100 years ago. And they'll understand things 100 years from now. If the Lord leaves us, please don't. But if he leaves us here 100 more years, they'll understand it better than we do today. But the Bible gives us a timeline on certain things that he wants us to know. And we have specific times here that he gave it to us for that. And he wants us to know that's why it's there. It's there so that we can have something to show us exactly when it did. And the world can't say he rose on Good Friday or died on Good Friday. But we have to be able to show them and understand. You're never going to make people understand, because if they don't want to know, they don't care. It just doesn't matter to them. But here's what I'm going to kind of end with. And I don't know where you are on it. I don't know if you may not have even heard it or didn't even realize it and understand it until we've done it. But if you're one of those folks that just, it's just okay. There's a lot of people out there that's just like, the world just told me that. I know it's wrong. I know it's not right, but it's okay. I know it's different. It doesn't really matter to me. Well, if you make that compromise, what other compromises are you going to make? Are you going to make the compromise on, we don't really have a rapture. Rapture's not even mentioned in the Bible. We don't have a rapture. We're going to go through the tribulation. Hey, there's churches in Dyersburg that teach that. Right? So maybe that's not true. What if, any of those, spiritual circumcision? I don't understand spiritual circumcision. Maybe I'm not really once saved and always saved. Maybe I got to work for it. They all go hand in hand. And then maybe, what if, there's lots and lots of churches and people that believe, as long as I believe that he died on the cross, he died for me, he died for everybody. I'm good. I don't necessarily have to accept the gift that he gave me. I just believe. Well, James tells us the devils believe, and they trembled because they are going to hell. And if you just believe that he died, that some Savior died, but he's not necessarily your Savior, then you make compromises in your life. And those compromises make a difference. So just, if nothing else, just know, you know that he's no way he died on Good Friday. If nothing else, know that there's just no way he died on Good Friday. And know enough that you can tell somebody, hey, that's just a fictional holiday that the world's made up, and it really doesn't mean anything, and If he want to give you a day off and you want to take it, that's fine. I'm going to take mine if they give it to me. But I know that it's not right. And if somebody wants to have a conversation with me, then I'll show them in the Bible why it's not right. Questions, anybody? I'll answer any questions. If anybody has something they don't understand. Nothing. Blank stares. Blank stares. Everybody, that means it's clear as